Hello, friends. Welcome back. It is another summer edition of Barn Burner, part 2 of our Calgary Flames Top Prospect Show with our managing editor of FlamesNation.ca, Ryan Pike. He's wearing the hat, he's repping the gear, and he's ready to spit some logic about prospects. Pike, thanks for doing this with us. Part 1 aired last week. Hot tip, secret, life hack, pull the curtain back. We're recording this once, so this will be a little. We're still doing the top prospects, so this is part 2, and we're airing it to coincide with the release of the top 5 on the website. We mentioned a lot of names. We actually did a little bit on prospects 20 through 11 last week, and then longer looks at 10 through 6. I'm putting you on the spot. Do you happen to have last year's top 5 prospects for the Calgary Flames? I know you do some.
You know I do.
It's just a matter of how quickly you can open
should we go
spreadsheet.
Should we go through top 5 to 1?
Just and we don't need blurbs. Just like remind us the names so we can compare and contrast.
Here is the top 5 from 2023.
Okay.
Defender Etienne Morin was at 5.
Okay.
At
and
4,
this year is already dropped to 10, you could say, which is a reflection of A, the system, and B, that less than sexy point totally put up this year. Okay. Number 4.
Number 4, Samuel Honzik.
Okay. Which does feel low for a guy that was just drafted in the first round, but he had good company at the top.
He had good company with the top. Number 3 was Jacob Pelche,
who aged out and gamesed out, excuse me.
He gamesed out. Yeah, he graduated. Number 2 was Matt Coronato, who also aged out / gamesed out. And then number 1 last year, for the second year in a row, was Dustin Wolf. Dustin Wolf was I love Dustin Wolf's trajectory because it's just weird and wacky and fun.
Yeah.
So Dustin Wolf, as you might remember, my friend, he was drafted in the Vancouver draft in 2019. He was the 4th and last player drafted. I was sitting in the bleachers, and at that point, people are packing up and getting the hell out of there and running to their hotels and trying to get the hell out of Dodge before too long.
Yeah.
And try not to get sucked into the Roxy again for another night. So the 4th and last, pretty much everyone's out of the building at that point, but Wolf gets selected. And there's a little woo from his family. And
they were there.
And his friends there. So he got drafted. He in 2019, he was 14th in our ranking. In 2020, after being named the Western Hockey League's top goaltender that year, he was up to 5th.
Yeah.
2021, he was 4th. And then 22 and 23, he was 1st back to back.
And if we want to recap, it was first year, like draft year, goalie of the year in the Western League, goalie of the year in the Western League, goalie of the year in the American League as a rookie, which is really, really unheralded stuff, uncommon. And then goalie of the year in the American League and AHL MVP, which is where left him at number 1 last year for the 2023 rankings. Our exercise today will be to see if by the end of the show, it is a Dustin Wolf hat trick or a three-peat, if you will, but we won't start there. We'll start at number 5.
Number 5.
But did you actually get to the Roxy for the draft in 2019?
No, we didn't.
Yeah.
I forget what I did that.
I've been once or twice.
Yeah.
It's always a story when you go to the Roxy.
No, we were good that weekend. We had too much work to do.
Fair enough.
So number 5 is actually someone we're familiar with, Calgary kid, Andrew Basha from the Medicine Hat Tigers.
This was a fun one because he was a guy that was going in a lot of mock drafts heading into the draft in Vegas this summer, late in the first, sometimes early in the second. And as a guy from Calgary, with the Flames holding that second first rounder that the Vancouver Canucks gave them in the Elias Lindholm deal, there was a lot of maybe Bash is a fit for the Calgary Flames with that pick that I believed ended up being 28th in the draft for the Canucks' strong regular season finish. It wasn't to be in the first round, but day 2 it was meant to be, as Basha was scooped up by Craig Conroy. And, Basha's a familiar character, played his minor hockey in Glen Lake. His dad owns a couple particularly famous establishments for our staff, being blocks away and serving alcohol. So it was a feel-good story on many levels for people in this studio, in this construction burdened part of town.
Yeah. A lot of guys. So everyone was aware that Cade Lindstrom was a damn fine hockey player.
Yes.
So early draft year projections were Cade Lindstrom's going to go high. And a lot of times, if you're the other guy on a team with a star like Cade Lindstrom, it can either be great for you, it can be terrible for you, depending on how you approach it and how the team approaches it. And so I personally saw a bunch of Metasnack games early in the year, and you go, Lindstrom, high-end player, great everything, hard to really poke holes in this game. But the guy I came away really impressed with was Basha, because Basha did not take a shift off. Basha may not have the skill ceiling of Cade Lindstrom, nor the size.
Which is fair, given where Lindstrom went in the draft.
Exactly. But, I mean, Basha is a pain in the backside. He plays with pace. He plays with skill. He's, the kind of guy that, the first couple shifts of a game, he'll finish his checks and wear on you. And by the end of the game, you're like, oh God, this guy's still coming at me. And he can also follow up with some skill. And so he's the kind of guy that I think he has a lot of good pieces to his game, because, he's not a guy that relies on size. He's not a guy that relies on prodigious skill. He's not a guy that relies on any one thing. He has a package of attributes that really make him a pretty complete junior player, and we'll see how he goes. But yeah, he was one of those guys. I think the Flames got him at 41. He was a guy that prognosticators are like, late first, early second could be good. Him and Matt Vigradine were sort of the two guys that I think a lot of folks sort of saw as one could go at 28, one can go at 41. Neither really be terribly surprising based on the quality of the players and the quality of the draft class. And the Flames happened to get Gradine earlier and Basha later. But, Basha is one of those guys that, looking at social media, especially folks who follow the Western League, as soon as he got picked, a lot of people were like, oh God, that's a really good pick. Makes a lot of sense. The local ties give you a nice warm and fuzzies, but he's also just a hell of a player. And
so on the large and local Venn diagram,
he's not large, but he is local.
Okay, good.
But he plays large. Like, he's one of those guys where, there's I think the big criticism of the Flames prospect pool, and I think they've done a pretty decent job trying to address that, is their big players weren't particularly skilled and their skilled players weren't particularly big. And you could also add a caveat to that, is a lot of big players don't play mean or don't use their size as effectively as they could. Basha was not given a lot of size by nature, but geez, he plays like he does. And that's something that I think will really help him as he moves forward.
Medicine has to be a fun team to watch, because not only do you have Lindstrom, who may be returned. I would think that would make sense. Although, God, I mean, what Columbus, who knows? Basha. And then, of course, Gavin McKenna, who isn't draft eligible until 2026, but is thought of as being the consensus one at this juncture for the 2026 draft, which is 2 summers from now, and put up nearly 100 points as a 16-year-old in the Western League. I would be hitmanhockey.com getting those Medicine Hat tickets for this season. It won't be boring. And now there's a Flames tie-in.
Yeah. And I mean, I'd say take as many opportunities as you can to watch Gavin McKenna the next couple of years, but also, yeah, I'm a big fan of the Basha pick. He's the type of player that every team wants more of in the organization. If you have one, you want 3 of them. And he's I think he's going to be a player that the Flames fans, once they get to see him live and in person, really start rooting for even more than they probably already do.
That's fair. It sounded like the role he was given his first 2 years in the Western League, not a full season as 16, full season as 17, in terms of the more of like a grinding, checking, bottom 6 profile. And this year, the Lindstrom injury, amongst him just developing and being another year older in the league, he really got to showcase his offensive prowess. I think you've kind of alluded to it, but it would make you feel warm and fuzzy, based on the notion that he could be a very effective checker if there isn't substantial offense in the NHL level.
Yeah, he's the kind of guy that I think he's got some versatility to him. And I think because, we've seen, there's small guys that really rely on speed and dynamism and, their ability to avoid checks because they're small and they can't withstand the physical game. He can withstand the physical game, but he's still got some dynamism to his game. He's able to check. He's able to play physical, and he's able to really make effective plays in all 3 zones. And, for Flames fans, he wears 34 because his favorite player was Mika Kiprusoff.
Yes, yeah, I just love him.
And so, yeah, like I think if, from a hockey standpoint, he ticks a lot of the boxes that the Flames really needed. If he was a center, it's the only way he could have been an even better fit.
Or just 2 inches taller, as silly as that sounds. But those, if you wanted, but then you're not getting him at 41. You're just not. Like, if he's a center and he's 6'1", this is, at picking the teens, probably. Is that fair?
Yeah, maybe, but he's, you can't argue with the caliber of the player, and he had a really good draft year. He was in the shadow of Lindstrom, but didn't really resign himself to being in the shadow.
Right. Never mind McKenna and Weisbach. Yeah.
He was noticeable in every way. I think a guy in his position would want to be noticeable, and as a result, I mean, he landed himself in a pretty good spot.
By the way, free plug for our In the Dome boys with Andrew Basha. The show dropped on August 8th. If you haven't checked in yet, check the latest episode of In the Dome, the Flames podcast, also in the Nations Network. Is the Calgarian checked in? How good is that?
Yeah, it's pretty good. They
Jack, why didn't we get Basha? The hell?
Didn't they also get Sutter's kid?
They did. Yes.
You guys?
I mean, Bash is no disrespect to Sutter. But we're excited about the new toys always, especially on a prospect show. But what was interesting about the Brett Sutter show is the fellas actually asked him a ton of questions about a lot of those AHL Wranglers who are transitioning to the NHL level. So I take it all back. We'd love to have Brett too.
You guys got to step your game up. You're leaving all this stuff on the table, and the boys are making a.
Jack, could you post a job posting for producer, please? We need someone to book the show. Also, hand yourself a pink slip. I'm kidding. Boomer hates guests. You know that. We have 3 insiders a week. We're good. Okay, so he was pick number 41. He is prospect number 5 on our Flames Nation Top Flames Prospects as we welcome you to part 2. Basha, 5'11", 175. Not small, but certainly not big. And I think safe to say a little below average in size. That doesn't curse him. He's not a stay-at-home defenseman. And you'll get a chance to see him a ton at the Dome this year based on him playing in the same division as the Calgary Hitmen. That will be fun.
Yeah. And are we moving on to 4?
Let's go to number 4. Who do we have here? Another European checking in. The only Euro in the top 5.
And coincidentally, another player that fans might be able to see at the Dome this year.
Well, I think they will if he stays healthy, no matter where he plays. But yeah, maybe potentially a lot.
Samuel Honzik.
Okay, so last year's first rounder, not the 2024 draft, the 2023 first overall selection in the teens. The draft was in Nashville. Boomer and I had to rent a car and drive through the night to get to Louisville, Kentucky, only to nearly miss our flight and then have it be delayed by 2 hours and nearly got trapped in Kentucky for the Canada Day long weekend. These in-person drafts are fun. It broke Boomer. He'll never go to one again.
And meanwhile, I just stayed in Nashville the whole time.
Yes, that's a sad
I had a great time at the draft.
You don't have children. Anyway,
Samuel Honzik. So we were joking off air. Is there any more iconic duo than Calgary Flames first rounders and poorly timed injuries?
No.
So Samuel Honzik, Flames got him last year at 16. The first draft pick that Craig Conroy made as general manager. Big, guy who projectable. If you're trying to figure out if you want some skill size, if you listen to guys like me whining about the lack of skilled size, you go, Jesus, Pike, we just got Sam Honzik. He's big and he's skilled and he scored a ton.
Mm-hmm.
The big knock on Honzik is he's just got horrible luck. I don't know. He in the same kind of
never thing. Bring him to the casino. Don't go bet on the ponies with him.
At the World Juniors, he got a skate lacer. He got cut on the leg, pretty nasty cut, and basically after his first or second game in the World Juniors was gone because he had to get it dealt with. So
2 seasons ago.
So that took him out of a big chunk of his draft year. Then he came back and had a good finish off the season. Last year, he was playing in Flames camp, played pretty well, and suffered, I believe, is an abdominal injury. I forget the exact nature of the injury. And to be honest, I don't really want to be poking around people's medical histories outside of, I was just told by someone, I think someone from the Vancouver Giants said, midsection abdominal injury, whatever it was not fun for him and something he couldn't play through. So he missed a big chunk of the season. He came back, he played a few weeks, he went to the World Juniors, he played the World Juniors, he came back, and then he got bashed in the face. I forget the exact nature of his facial injury. He was either jaw or nose or something, but either way, he had to wear a bubble.
Yeah.
And he was a little bit tender in the facial area for the remainder of the season. And then he came and finished off the season with the Wranglers. So he is big, but I think the big challenge for him is geez, he just needs a year where he's healthy because he needs to get some reps in. They were talking about potentially moving him to center last year because, he was big and he wanted to play center. And they wanted to try him out because if you look at his attributes, his size, his ability to think the game, his ability to move and play in all three zones, center seems like a good spot for him. They didn't get a chance to use him at all because he missed the entirety of the first 2-3 months of the Western League season. And you don't really want to try a guy out at a new position midway through the year. So we'll see what happens with that. But he's just a guy that I think if he can just, whatever he was doing to get hurt and have those fluky injuries, do the opposite. Like
the voodoo doll needs to get tossed out. We've had enough here.
Yeah. He's one of those guys that he's been training, this offseason with Martin Pospisil. And I think Martin Pospisil last year was second or third in fitness testing. So he's picking the right guys. And especially if you're looking for guys that can have raised their stock in a year, I don't think anyone's done better than Pospisil, but we'll see what they end up doing.
I'll give him another guy to look up to because you mentioned Pospisil. Wow, geez. Martin Pospisil wasn't even on our top 20 prospects a year ago.
Nope.
And is one of the most impactful Flames this year in terms of his arrival and his just ability to change the temperature in a hockey game. He also had to overcome a lot of injury issues. Very similar to also what Connor Zary went through was Honzik's season. The year after his draft, a serious injury to the point where it was like, that's just a lot of bad luck. And I didn't think a guy could get this injured. And now maybe he's not really that much of a prospect anymore. Zary turned it around. There's another guy. Hopefully he can glean some inspiration from.
Yeah. And I mean, injuries happen. And I think the big challenge is just hope that they don't happen during waiver exempt years because, we saw, we talked about Jacob Pelche at the beginning of the last week's show, but he had some bad injury luck last year. Yusuf Valimaki in his 3-year entry level deal, he missed a year and a half. And so the free developmental years to really become what you're going to become, the years that you become what you're going to become are your 2 18-19 years, and then usually your 3 years of entry level. Usually
that's a 5-year window where you got to get better and prove what you are, and the organization allows you that time because other teams can't pluck you yet.
Yeah, but so Valimaki I think is the worst case scenario because he had some gnarly injuries at the worst possible time, and then by the time he got his feet back under him,
wasn't a job.
It wasn't a job anymore. So if you're Honzik, you go, okay, if you were going to get your voodoo doll poked by whoever hates you, you might as well just do it right now and get it over with. And hopefully, he's 20 this year. He is eligible to go back to the Western League as an overager / an import. He's what the kids call a 2-spotter. Most of the time teams don't carry 2-spotters because you get 2 import spots. You don't like using one on a guy who's also one of your 3 20-year-olds.
Overagers,
so he, based on the opportunities that he probably will have challenges getting in junior because of his status as a 2-spotter, he'll be given every opportunity to play with the Wranglers this year. And, he was one of those guys, he got some time with the Wranglers in the playoffs a little bit last year. I think he played 1 or 2 games. He played 1 or 2 games at the end of the regular season. They're still high on him. And I think, Craig Conroy sort of has remarked both about Pelche, and I think he also related a bit about Honzik. You take a look at the last year and you just sort of go, okay, dump it out. And that's what, honestly, that's what the Flames did with Connor Zary. Zary's first year of his entry level contract, he broke his ankle in not even a preseason game, a prospect camp game at the Saddle Dome against the Oilers. He blocked a shot at the wrong way, tried to turn into it, caught in the wrong way. He missed the first chunk of the season and his year was kind of all over the place.
Catch up.
Yeah. And so Honzik was like that last year, and you don't hold against the kid. You just go, okay, take what you can learn from the year, dump out the rest of it, and let's start you fresh. And it's his first year of his entry level. And I think that's their philosophy. They're going to basically treat it like they're starting fresh.
Will be 20. It's his 20-year-old season. He is a large human, 6'4", over 180. Is he a center is the question. It could have been a year where we got closer to figuring that out, but maybe not unlike Connor Zary. We'll have to take some time and see. Maybe he's a center at one level, but not at the other. I'd love to see him get him reps there, but if you're trying to make the jump from junior to the AHL, and now they're going to try to change your position, and you've missed a lot of hockey the last 2 years, probably your safest bet is he's a winger with the Wranglers.
I would think so. I mean, and at least that way, especially you have the ability to shelter him a bit. You have the ability to sort of try him in different positions. The nice thing for the nice thing looking at the Wranglers depth chart, they have a lot of interesting players at different positions. Like, you have, like, let's put it this way, you have Stromgren, who you probably have some confidence in. Maybe you can eat some of the hard minutes for you, depending on what happens. You're going to have potentially maybe Dryden Hunt, maybe Martin Firk, maybe Walker Duehr, depending on what happens, maybe Klapka, Clark Bishop. Like, they have a lot of veteran guys that
good AHLers.
Good AHLers. I'd pick on Clark Bishop and Justin Kirkland as guys that might be ideally situated to really help him out and sort of show him the ropes, because they've been there, they've done that, they're used to that role. And I think I'm pretty bullish on Honzek, but he's a guy that kind of needs to have a big year to get his feet under him.
Yeah, fair enough. Needs a big year. Let's hope for Flames fans' sake he does. And to your point, there should be a lot of dome time. There is a chance to go back to junior, but I do think when you're 6'4" and almost 200 pounds, it's probably time to try yourself against 200. Might be a little exaggerating, but go play against men, right? So we'll see what and to be fair, like, Craig Conroy's not going to put him on one team or the other right now. You're going to have to earn a job in the American League. And that's what you want him to do. You hope he has a great offseason. He comes in and you're like, yeah, he's ready to play with men.
Yeah, and I think the fact that he had that opportunity at the end of the year with the Wranglers will give him a bit of confidence. I think the fact that, again, you want to learn from guys that have done it. I don't think there's a player in the organization that's had a more tumultuous developmental path than Martin Pospisil and succeeded.
Yeah.
And so having someone who's from the same part of the world, who's gone through some of the same experiences, they both played World Juniors, they both played in a lot of the same tournaments, a lot of the same leagues, know a lot of the same people. And having someone like that who can sort of, have your back and say, hey, this is what worked for me. I would argue the mental side of it, like just the idea of, again, I always going to bring up Wes Gilbertson's pieces because he does such a good job with these kind of profiles. He wrote a piece last year, I think right after his Pospisil came up in November, December, talking about how Pospisil almost retired. He was, he had the concussion issues, he had the shoulder issues. Yeah. And I think he was like, okay, I might be done. And then he stuck it out. And now he's in the NHL and he's an NHL
contract. Yeah.
So I think if you're, especially if you're Honzek and you're thinking, oh God, the world's against me, how the hell am I going to break through here? Having someone who's gone through probably the worst version of that and been able to come on the other side and be like, hey, it does get better. You can't get the other side of this. Don't worry, we got this, man. And also somebody who top 3 in fitness testing, who can help get you man strong. Yeah, I think there's a lot of reasons to be optimistic about Honzek. I understand, he missed a year and a half. I think there's a reason to be somewhat skeptical, but the attributes the player has
haven't gone away.
Very good.
Yeah. And those attributes, like strong work on the walls, can work the net front. Like he's a guy that, there's a lot of ceiling there. I think a lot of people in the organization believe. Yeah. Otherwise it wouldn't have taken him that high. But I think it's also a pretty safe floor, if you understand what I'm saying. Like, I think at worst, he could be a very effective third liner. Does that feel fair?
I think so. And I think, it's, again, just the idea that I think his size gives him, the size and his smarts give him a decent floor because he's not going to get less big. But fair. I think just figuring out ways to use
not until he's like 80 Pike.
At some point, everyone starts shrinking. But yeah, like Honzek, there's reasons why the scouting staff, the Western League staff, pretty much all their scouts were really, really excited about the player, not just because of the human, not just because of the size, but what he's been able to do, and especially import coming over to North America
first year.
There's a lot of stuff thrown at you, and he managed to adjust to a lot of it. So.
As always, a big shout out to one of our big sponsors, McLeod Law. Great people. We talk about it on the show. Shane King and Peter Klein and Austin and everybody there. What it is they're Calgary people taking care of Calgary people. You're not getting, when you reach out to McLeod Law, they're not sending you to Toronto or Vancouver or someplace they don't know who you are. These are Calgary folks. They're proud of those Calgary roots. They are here every single day. It's a big part of their long-standing client relationships. They get the way things work, and they want to help you. Whatever your challenge is, business or personal, they're just a click away. McLeod-law.com is the website. The very best. Good people making a difference. McLeod Law.
Hey guys, it's Pinder, the final major of the tennis season is coming up, and not many times you could say that Novak Djokovic is not favored to win a major. That is the case as we head towards Flushing Meadows in New York. where I don't mind putting a little dough on the gold medalist who just beat Carlos Alcaraz at the Olympics. Joker to win the U.S. Open, 2.87 your odds on Bet365. That, my bet of the day. This segment, of course, brought to you by our good friends at Bet365, a proud partner of Barn Burner. Open an account with Bet365 today and bet on a huge range of markets. So whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Use code FNBONUS. That's code FNBONUS.
Hello, friend. I didn't see you there. I was just enjoying a Barn Burner Blonde here on this beautiful summer day. We wait all year for summer. It is nice to finally have it here, and what better drink to enjoy and quench that thirst than a Barn Burner Blonde from Origin Brewing. They have a Calgary location now. I don't know if you knew that. They had the tap room and the brewery in Strathmore, still there, still pumping out all the great delicious goodness that goes hand in hand with Origin Brewing, but now also a Calgary location. You can grab a 4-pack. You can grab as many as you would like, a keg perhaps, a growler if you'd like, maybe even some Origin merch that I just happen to be wearing. A coincidence, who knew? Friends, Origin Brewing, great partners of Barn Burner, and of course, Barn Burner Blonde. Coincidence that we were all here at the same time. Have a great summer, everybody. Origin Brewing.
Let's get back to another summer edition of Barn Burner. All right, that's your number 4 prospect. Our number 4 prospect at FlamesNation.ca, Samuel Honzik. Let's get to number 3, the only American. No, it's not true at all. Only American skater.
The
top 10.
One of 2 Americans in the top 5.
Almost caught myself there. I mean, there's going to be a huge surprise here, I'm sure. We led the show off talking about Dustin Wolf back to back, but it's Hunter Brzustewicz who almost immediately went from who is this guy to common Flames fans to like, oh my God, look what this guy's doing. He's one of us. He's our prospect, said Flames fans. He came over in the Elias Lindholm deal, and I remember where we were when that deal broke. It was like
you guys just wandering through Toronto.
It was our parent company had a big dinner, and we were meeting a bunch of the other people that do shows, some of the front office, and
we have other people who do shows,
big wigs in Toronto. And of course, we're sitting there, and Seravalli's a table away, and we start to hear the Elias Lindholm to Vancouver is almost done. It involves Kuzmenko. It's going to be Kuzmenko and picks. It's Kuzmenko and picks and some players, and one of the players was Hunter Brzustewicz, who we had to figure out how a man could have so many vowels in one last name. But once we got over that, what's going on here? Because he's scoring points like a forward, and he at 92 points, the second highest scoring defenseman in the OHL last season, and
the only other defenseman who scored more points in the OHL was a guy that Flames drafted at 6th overall, 9th overall, 9th overall.
Yeah,
like 6 and 9.
He'll be on this show as well. We'll get there.
We'll get there. Yeah, I think Brzustewicz, he was a guy. I think that Vancouver got him 3rd round, and they liked him. As a prospect, he was an American guy and didn't get a lot of attention. He played them in the U.S. National Development System instead of going to college. Made the jump to the OHL. And he's been playing a very big role in Kitchener. Good player, power play quarterback, offense up the wazoo. He's not a shutdown defender by any stretch. I'd say he's basically the Al McInnes in the sense that he's. I think Al McInnes had some high praise. Yeah, but I think he's the guy that played a ton of offensive minutes, and if he's 20, signed an entry level deal, so he's going to be. More likely not, much like Honzik, he's eligible to return to the OHL, but he will not return to the OHL. He has played so much hockey in the OHL, and to be blunt, I mean,
what more does he need to prove there? He just had 92 points as a defenseman.
Well, he got outscored by a guy a little bit younger than him, so damn it, he needs to go back and really dominate. But yeah, unless you're absolutely nitpicking his game, you're like, okay, well, this guy's gonna go to play pro now. He's like he's not. If the big knocks against Brzustewicz is. Okay, is he great in his own zone? He's not great. He's not terrible. He's fine. You probably want him to be better than fine if he goes to the NHL. So he needs to become better than fine. The place he's going to get better is in the American League.
Yes,
and so they have guys who can help him. And he's he needs to probably become, as the kids say, man strong. He's still kind of boyish. He's 20. He's going to fill out. So they need to, if you're playing in Wrangler Town, you get, those hands-on reps of the developmental staff. And, the Wranglers and the Flames have their own strength coaches and strength staff in the Saddle Dome working with their young players. And I think he's a guy that just needs to be pushed a bit to fill out, because, he was so good in the OHL that I just think, the rest of his details will probably need to be polished a bit. But I mean, you look at a guy with those kind of numbers, like it's just insane numbers.
92 points as a defenseman.
Like he immediately,
you were tracking it. I remember it was like, if he has a couple of huge games, like he could hit 100. We're talking about rare air in the history of the OHL. You're talking about
just fell short. He just
Hall of Fame caliber guy. Now that doesn't mean he's going to be a prolific NHLer, but what it tells you is that he's an incredibly rare offensive talent.
Yeah. And, that's what you want. You want guys that can move the needle for you offensively. And, we talked, earlier in last week's episode about sort of the Flames had a bunch of guys that could sort of play the defensive role. You have your Grushnikovs, you have your Solovyovs, you have your Kuznetsovs, maybe Yoni Yermo, who's sort of a bit more of a sort of an all-rounder. I don't know he's quite got the ceiling at either end that some of these other guys do defensively or offensively, but he'll be playing potentially at Dev Camp. They actually had Yermo and Brustevich playing out a pairing, and they're pretty decent. But if the idea is, okay, you got guys that can keep the puck out of their own end. Now you need some guys that can run a power play or potentially be, we've heard this here for years, basically since 2019, when Cale Makar came in and just blew the doors off of the Flames in that first round series, and people going, oh, geez, wouldn't you love to have one of those? I don't know if Hunter Brustevich is quite that, but he's not far off. He's not quite Cale Makar in terms of I don't know if he has that kind of ceiling. And I think Makar's details in all three zones are a little bit better. But if you have a poor man's Cale Makar and you got him as one of the prospects out of 6 pieces you got for Elias Lindholm, that's not a bad haul.
It really is impressive. Yeah. That deal continues to look like Craig Conroy's best as the general manager. That doesn't mean there weren't other good ones, but some of the returns felt right around where they should be. Some felt a little light, but the one that just felt like it was out of the bell curve of expected outcomes was the Lindholm deal, because he wasn't having a great year. You were only going to rent him for 2 or 3 months if you're Vancouver. They get a first. They get a conditional 4th, which could have turned into a 3rd and didn't.
And then they traded that for 2 picks.
And they got that for 2 picks. And then you have the 2 European defensemen you have Yermo and then Brustevich. Brustevich is almost immediately one of the best prospects in the Flame system. Yes, he had a really good year, but you get to watch him for most of that year before you got him in the trade. There's a serious get for Craig Conroy on top of the first and all the other pieces. Brustevich checks in at number 3. And yes, another guy you'll be able to see at the Dome a bunch. Can he run an American League power play? Can he pile up points at the American League? Can he work out those away from the puck details, D-zone details with the Wranglers this year? Because look, he's a later birthday. If he's very good at this level, they're not going to leave him there long.
Oh no. And I think that's a nice thing. If you're looking at the Flames, I mean, the only Wranglers D-man I think might push for time this year at a significant level is Solovyov, because I think he has the familiarity and, I'd say he's a high floor guy. I don't know if he's a high ceiling guy, but he's probably close to what he's going to become. So you can
he's a 6'7" that's got some size and looks comfy in his own zone. That's going to give you no offense. So if you need a 6'7" to play that role, which 6'7s are asked to play, you can go to him. You saw it this year. It was fine.
And the nice thing is though, between Solovyov and Pahal and maybe Kevin Ball, depending if he's a long-term piece, and Rasmus Anderson's got 2 years left. They have and heck, Jake Bean is only signed for 2 years. So you have probably a window where maybe some spots start coming open after a year, maybe some more come open after 2 years, and you basically have the ability to tell all the kids, okay, tell you what, we got contracts coming up. And we've shown the ability, the Flames have shown the willingness with guys of the year left. This particular general manager showed a willingness with guys of the year left, Tyler Toffoli. If there's guys who are pushing and we want to make spots, we'll make spots for you.
Yeah.
But you gotta, you'll know the guys who are sort of teetering. It's up to you to sort of push them off the brink.
Yeah.
And they have some guys that could be here long-term or could not. And I think that's going to be the fascinating part. So I think Brustevich, he's really well positioned. He's probably for 3 months, he was the best defensive defenseman in the system. And then other stuff happened. But if he's your second best or third best defensive defenseman in your system, NHL or otherwise, you look at your system and go, that's pretty good. That's something you can build off of.
It is interesting. Suddenly they got a lot of guys that can zip it around offensively. You know, Poirier's sort of at the end of his prospect window. He's getting a fresh start this year based on losing last year to injury, most of it. Moran, his star kind of faded a bit in the draft +1 season, but we'll see if he can get it back on track. Clearly the guy at number 9 is an incredibly special offensive player. And, you know, that's like that. You said it a year ago. Not a lot of those guys are there or we're just getting into the system. Berstevich is added. Like it's going to be a battle to see who's running the power play for this club in 3-4 years.
Yeah. And, you know, it's, there's going to be a lot of competition. It used to be, you know, when the Flame system was a little bit shallower, guys got chances by default because it's like, oh, you know, we need a winger. Who they got? Okay. Well, we need a goalie. Who they got? Oh, I need a defenseman. Who they got? Now, outside of maybe goaltender, you got like
pushing
3-4 credible options, like maybe not center, but you have some options of young guys you could try out. But they have a lot of really versatile, unique depth and a lot of different types of players. So like Slavyov, if you need a bottom sixer, is probably your first guy up. But you know,
let's say you lose Uyghur to injury, you're looking for a different kind of guy.
One of your offensive guys gets hurt, depending on what side he shoots. Maybe you give Berstevich, maybe you give Poirier, maybe you give someone else. Like that's the exciting thing. It's a group that's shown the willingness as recently as last November to, if the mojo's not going on the big club or someone gets hurt, they'll throw whoever's working on the AHL level there and give them a chance.
All right, prospect number 2 of your top 10 is coming up in mere moments. We'll know who number 1 is based on the 2 stud prospects left on the table, and we will find out in moments whether Dustin Wolf has a three-peat as the top prospect in the organization. Pike, prospect number 2 is?
It's Dustin Wolf. The king is dead. Long live the king. This is in no way a knock on Dustin Wolf. On last week's program, we spoke rather glowingly about the season that Matt Coronado had, in the sense that Coronado was just asked to do a bunch of different things and I think did them quite well. And so I would say the same thing about Dustin Wolf. Dustin Wolf, MVP a year prior, goaltender of the year 4 years in a row. He was not goaltender of the year last year in the American League, simply because, you know, he was here I think he was in the NHL 1/3 of the year. And so he just didn't have the sample size in the American League to be the MVP or a top contender for the Hap Holmes, or I think it's the Hap Holmes award, whatever the hell it was, the AHL goalie of the year award that he won twice. But
3P would have been special there, but it also speaks to the one thing you can't go very far without mentioning. If Dustin Wolf was 6'4", doing the things he's been doing his whole career,
he's
already in the NHL like years ago. Like Spencer Knight and he, I believe, are same birth year or same draft class. Spencer Knight had similar numbers at a similar level his draft year, went in the top 15 picks.
Yeah.
Dustin Wolf was the 4th to last pick of the entire draft, round 7. Again, both USA World Junior goalies, both dominant numbers.
The funniest thing about that is, so the World Junior goalies that year, the Spencer Knight, who was the first goalie picked that year, and Dustin Wolf, the last goalie picked that year, which is phenomenal to me.
Yeah. And that was the goaltending combo for the Americans at that tournament. Just wild.
Yeah. Well, this is the idea, like, for, you know, I mentioned Coronado, you know, so if you're Wolf, he'd done everything you really can do at the AHL level to be like a dominant player. Like, there's literally nothing else you can do once you're already the best. So
you've won the MVP. Like, how in the world do you top that? You don't. You graduate. And the challenge the Calgary Flames faced is you had Jacob Markstrom and Dan Vladar. And so if he's a non-goaltender, he would have graduated and been in the NHL. They didn't have a spot for him. And now they do. Jacob Markstrom's gone. Dan Vladar's coming off hip surgery, but will be ready, is already skating. And they brought in Cooley from
Devin Cooley, the most existential goalie I've ever heard.
Who is a very intriguing guy that was in an incredibly horrible environment, being a goalie for the San Jose Sharks, and had some good performances.
And some great interviews.
Big time. But this is Dustin Wolf's crease to lose. He's going to get a chance to be the man. And to be fair, from the trade deadline, once he got called up on, he had better numbers than Jacob Markstrom. He had better goals saved above expected than Jacob Markstrom.
Yeah.
When when this team was stripped of its best defensive pair before the deadline, and stripped is rude. I mean, you traded
They gave them away on purpose.
You traded Hanifin.
They made a conscious effort.
They were going to go. You needed to get younger. We understand all that.
There's a conscious uncoupling.
In that worst environment, Dustin Wolf was the best goalie they had last year.
Yeah. And I would say this, like his numbers in the year is basically, a lot of it was weird usage until about February or March, when they had, typically the year he had was, you got going to a rhythm in the American League, and then Markstrom's hurt again, you got to come up. He comes up, and he doesn't know how often he's going to play, because you don't know. It's it's emergency recall. You don't know how long Markstrom's out, so he'll be coming back up whenever. Mm-hmm. Okay, you're going back. Go back down to the Wranglers. It takes a little while to get used to the Wranglers, because AHL shooters, it's a different speed, so you have to sort of adjust.
And to be fair, mentally, to get to the NHL and get sent down, like, you're dealing with, there's a level of disappointment the guys have to get over. It's very rare to see a player sent from the NHL down to the A where they're like, "Hey guys, great to be back." Right? Like, even
if it was down the hallway, you're just like, "Oh God,
no," because his dream is to be an NHLer, and he's like, "I'm the bloody MVP of this league." Like, I would understand that guy wants to be up, and to your point, when you're in sort of like a little spell here, move back here. Oh, no notice, you're coming up here. Back to back, you're playing here. Like, he came up after the Vladar injury and got a run of play.
Well, especially like he was up originally because Markstrom is still dealing with an injury, and I don't think he got told, "Hey, you're up," until they announced the Vladar injury. It's still like sort of they had a plan. Mm-hmm. I think once they sort of threw in the towel.
When they shut down Vladar, it's obvious what's happening.
Even before that, like they had that stretch where the Markstrom was out, and they're like, "Okay, well, we're not making the playoffs. We're post deadline. We're very clear eyed about what we are." So they mapped out some starts for Wolf and be like, "Okay, Marky's going to be back, date whatever. You're going to get this many starts. Here's the game plan. Let's go." And so he got some starts, and his numbers were good, and he was able to develop a rhythm. And then I think probably everyone's like, "Oh man, it's kind of a shame he has to go down." But then obviously Vladar was battling through stuff, and it just so happened. There's no way it's a coincidence. This is definitely what they planned. Once Vladar was up, or once Markstrom was back, they're like, "Okay, we got to shut Dan down.
He needs surgery. Let's get it done soon.
Let's get him done. He can, we've already seen like Wolf's got a rhythm. Markstrom's back. They can work together for a bit. He can learn from the veteran, and Vladar needs surgery. Yeah. He, poor guy, like he told us about the lining of his hip was torn. And it's we're getting a lot of weird medical stuff on the last couple of weeks here, but it was a not fun injury, especially for a goalie. And so you had the opportunity to keep arguably your most important prospect in the mix and give him a rhythm and get a chance to really be like, if Dustin Wolf was in the NHL, what would it look like? Yep. Well, it wouldn't look like up for a week, down for a week, up for a week. It would look like, okay, you're here. You're going to give you 2 months to really get used to it. Mm-hmm. And by the end of it, he had some swagger. He had some mojo, and he
looked like an NHL goalie. Like, I know people like he doesn't look big in the net all the time, but when he's not going to
get bigger.
When you looked at a blue line that at that point had Oliver Shillington, who had hardly played in 2 years, had Pahal waiver claim, Hanley waiver claim, Miramanov, a guy that hardly played in the last 2 seasons. Like, you literally put him out there in behind a defensive group that had Rasmus Andersson, Mackenzie Weegar, and a whole bunch of guys trying to prove they're NHLers.
Yeah, you had one NHL defensive pairing and a bunch of guys. You're like, I wonder what this guy is.
Yes.
And you're trying.
And in that environment, he posted mediocre numbers, which just by measuring it, that's excellent.
Yeah, like they should have been by all rights. If you take away the players that they had in front of him, they should have been San Jose bad the last month of the season. And they weren't. They were really, really, really competitive. Were they good? No. Were they a tough out? Yes. And that was the whole idea. And if the idea is if you're like, oh, what's it going to look like? What's it going to look like with Dustin Wolf in the Flames net? The answer is probably like March and April. And I don't
hopefully
hate that.
Better, because you don't bring in Ball to not play. And I do think the guys that were trying to prove something got to prove it. And I think, I don't think this is going to be elite defensive club, but I do think this coaching staff has wrung a lot of water out of the towel, so to speak, in terms of getting the most out of the group. And like he at the NHL level last year had a 316 and 893. That sounds incredibly bad. If you go just for environment, I bet he's better than league average.
Yeah. And an 890, and that's the full year. If you look
never mind the run.
If you look at his underlings from like February, March, April, they're about average.
Yeah.
So
for a rookie,
a guy being thrown in midseason behind a defense that had been utterly decimated by personnel changes, and let's be honest here. By March, actually, hell, it's the NHL. By November, December, most guys are playing through something, and so this was a team that was just completely outgunned and outmanned all the time, and their goaltending gave them a fighting chance.
Yeah.
And if you take, you bring in these guys and you give them a bit more structure, you give them a bit more veteran presence, you put some young guys who know Wolf and his tendencies and have built, like, the most fascinating thing for me was, like, I was talking to some folks, some pro scouts, and I was like, must be tough to be a goalie, because it's tough to be a goalie because you got to get used to your defenseman. It's tough for a defenseman to play behind a new goalie because they got to get used to each other's tendencies. Like we saw, how many weird things happen with Mike Smith in net simply because the defenseman did not know he was going to try that. And how many times,
I feel like that's part of Mike Smith's game, but yes,
we saw that bit with Markstrom too, where like when Markstrom got a little bit too amped up, he would try to make too much stuff happen while skating around. Yeah. I think if you're someone, the nice thing with so many of these guys growing up in the system together is
there's some
familiarity, especially within the defense. Even if you're a guy who, if you're Anderson, if you're Uyghur, if you're, Slavyev, if you're Pahal, if you're any of these guys, they know him. They played with him for a few months. And so if you're typically if you're starting, you traded your Vezina caliber goalie, guy who is the runner-up for the Vezina a few years ago, you traded him for a young guy and a pick. Okay, God, your team might be bad because you do not know what you have. Actually, you kind of do, though, because you had the ability to try him out. And the people who would need to adjust to what he does have arguably already had an opportunity to start learning.
Little message for you for the Mod Medical Clinic, bearoused.ca. As men, we can be a little sensitive. We don't want to share. We don't talk about certain things. But as men get older, things happen to our bodies. We know that. It's time to stop being silly, get out in the open, and talk about these things. With ViaSure from bearoused.ca, from the Mod Medical Clinic. If you're popping the blue pill, you need to learn about ViaSure. This is a non-medication approach. Muscle function, breaking down scar tissue, reforming blood vessels, no pain, no downtime. But it's instead of the short-term fix or whatever you get from the blue pill, let's get our bodies right. Pelvic floor physiotherapy is what they offer as well. The team there, they're going to help you with incontinence, sexual performance, hip, lower back pain, assist the stabilization to the core, stronger, better, more confident. Does it sound good? I think so. bearoused.ca is the website. It's here in our city. They're here to help, and they're here to take away the silly embarrassment or stigma that we have about not talking about things that happen to men when they grow older. You're gonna be so happy you did it. Confidence, pelvic floor stability. It's at the base root of all of this. We're having fun with it, but they are here to help you and make a real change in how you live your life, man. bearoused.ca. The Mod Medical Clinic is here to help.
Hey guys, Village Honda presents the Pinder Report weekdays throughout the season, but we're at your dealership for life today in the Northwest Auto Mall. Let's see what's happening at Village Honda. Everyone knows the CR-V, but did you know all the CR-Vs are made in Canada for Canadians? Pretty cool. Lots in stock and more coming in throughout the summer at Village Honda as well. How about the HR-V? You want to talk about performance, comfort, sporty styling, economical? Pretty sexy vehicle. Village Honda, your dealership for life, online at villagehonda.com and in the Northwest Auto Mall.
Are you still suffering from awful sleep because you're snoring, you're choking, you're waking up in the middle of the night, you wake up in the morning, you're more tired than you were when you went to bed? Outdoor Dental. It's a dental office, boom. What are you talking about? It isn't yes, but there's so much more. They have the Soleil laser. Again, we've been telling you for a long time. Soleil laser will go into the back of your throat, the soft palate. 2 15-minute treatments, pain-free, tightens the soft palate, and helps eliminate snoring. Can you take 2 15-minute chunks out of your life to get better sleep? You sleep better, you feel better, you're more productive, you're a happier person, people like being around you more. It's worth it. It's kind of a rhetorical thing. You do have the time, and it is worth it. Find out more online, the website outdoor.dental. Dr. J. Patel, He's awesome. You're going to love it. You're going to love the people there. They're going to take great care of you. Outdoor.dental is the website. Check it out today.
And we're back with more Barn Burner. Okay, question for you. What does a good year look like for Dustin Wolf? Because again, it's grading on a scale, because we know this team is very unlikely to be competitive and good in a playoff or better measurement.
Oh, they're going to be, I think many of the betting sites have the Flames 6 or 7 from the bottom. So they're going to be not great. And
yes,
it's probably the right time for them to be not great. I would argue
we all get that. What does a good season look like for Dustin Wolf?
I would say if he the fewer AHL games he plays, the better, because I think he's outgrown the AHL. There's nothing for him to accomplish in the AHL.
Agreed.
He's Hunter Brustevich the AHL. There's nothing left for him to do. And so for him, okay, there's 82 games. I would like to see, realistically, if he plays more than 40 games, I'd say that's a success, because
totally.
I ran something on the site early in July and August, just looking at looking at Cooley's numbers, looking at Vladar's numbers, and looking at Wolf's numbers, who is the most ready to face a big workload? And the answer was unabashedly Wolf. Wolf has played a ton of hockey. The only years he didn't play a ton of hockey was the COVID year. He played 40 some games last year, despite bouncing back and forth.
Yeah.
They played the hell out of him, and he's used to it. And he really likes getting the hell played out of him. So I think, as much as we're thinking, how are Vladar and Cooley going to fit in? I think Vladar and Cooley fit in ideally as complementary pieces to maximize Dustin Wolf's effectiveness.
I agree. I know Frank Seravalli had an interesting take this summer that was very against the grain, sort of noting his impression is that it's Vladar's crease to lose. I don't know that that's one that's going to age well. It's a different opinion, and that's fine. But I think it's not about Dan Vladar has had a lot of time to establish what he is at the NHL level. And the only guy that's been playing, to your point, 40 plus games every year, 47, 55, 43.
40 plus games
is pretty Dustin Wolf. And as a goalie, that's more than half the schedule.
And 40 plus games with pretty gaudy numbers.
There's incredible numbers of the American League. Yeah.
Incredible numbers. People forget, he was the MVP in the American League. He did everything but have playoff success in the Western League, because the 2 years that he was the starter, they didn't have playoffs because of COVID. And also he narrowly missed out on being the Western Hockey League's all-time shutouts leader because the season got cut short because of COVID.
Schedules. Two seasons got shortened.
At worst, he's the 3rd best goaltender in Western Hockey League history by the numbers.
Wow.
And so, he's got the pedigree, and I think he's, he had to develop a little bit of mental toughness last year with, he had one memorable game where he got absolutely shellacked against San Jose, and I'll give him credit. He came out and, he spoke with us, and, he was requested. He came out, he answered very, very, succinctly, here's the things I think I did wrong. Here's the things I want to work on. Then he got sent down the American League and got back to doing his thing. And so there's always going to be a certain amount of skepticism about a goalie who's generously listed at 6 foot. I have spoken with Dustin Wolf many times. Without skates on, he's about my height. I'm 5'11" and change. So he's probably rounding up.
Sure he is. Yeah, there's lots of people measured at 6 feet that he stands next to on the ice. They do not have helmets that go to the same spot.
Yeah, but I'll steal a line from our dear friend Brad Living, who's now in Leafs land. We were joking after the draft. I think during a development camp, a bunch of us were talking about, Wolf's not very big. I don't know. And he's like, yeah, he sure gets in the way of the puck, though, isn't he?
Yeah,
that's the whole game.
The
puck does not care about how tall it doesn't care about your birth certificate, what number you're drafted, or how tall you are. It just matters if you're in the way or not. And he's been fantastically effective at every level of hockey since he was a small child at getting in the way of pucks.
I'll add one little caveat to what does a good Dustin Wolf season look like. I agree with you. You play more than half the games, you've established yourself as a starter. Maybe not on a competitive team in the NHL, but for a first full campaign in the NHL to establish yourself as a number one, that would be really cool for Flames fans to see. That would be a significant accomplishment. Secondly, I'd love to see the goals saved above expected, these sort of environmental metrics in the positive, not the negative. Because I just think if you go into the season and you're like, look at the goals against that Fear had, and look at the save percentage that Mika had, and look at the goals, you're kind of missing the boat a bit. This is not going to be a good environment for a goalie to operate in. I think it's going to be a great year to look at adjusted numbers, not the traditional goalie stats. I know that's sometimes hard for people. Like, I don't get it. What does it mean? I always go by save percentage of goals against. Like, yeah, well, if someone faces 18 shots and none of them are from inside the house and another guy has 6 breakaways against, like, we understand those are different environments. I'll leave it at that. If he could get more than half the games, establish himself as a 1, and have some better than expected numbers from the environment he's going to be working in, trying to prove he's the NHL goaltender in, that for me is a wildly successful first full NHL campaign for Dustin Wolf.
Yeah. And I'm fascinated. I think the cool thing is looking at his contract. This is his last year of waiver exemption. He's got a 2-year deal. He's a 2-way this year and a 1-way the year after. They obviously like him. They obviously, he did not get a league min contract. He got a little bit above league min, which is a nice little vote of confidence. And now it's going to be up to him. And I think he's an easy guy for people to root for. And I think, I think there can be some nights that are long nights for the Flames, but I don't think it'll be because of their goaltending. I think it'll be, I think we're going to have a lot of nights in the Dome, even when the score is not ideal, where you hear a lot of howling.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Okay. That, the anticlimactic part of the show comes where you already know who the number 1 is, because we haven't said his name yet. And boy, he's a very good hockey player. The top prospect in the Flames Nation top prospect rankings for 2024. No doubt about the hype surrounding their number 9 overall selection. Zane Parik of the Ontario Hockey League, the Saginaw Spirit defenseman, was absolutely electric this year on the blue line. A right shot defender that I would say is just his side hustle is being a wizard. There is a lot of outthinking, deception, and wizardry occurring on the ice with him.
Oh God, he's good. I mean, like he's when we. If you want to get a nice bit of intel on this year's draft class, go back and watch the draft preview show we did. Yeah, because we got a lot of fun opinions on that. But I think the Flames went for ceiling. They went for a guy that he's 17 years old, just barely turned 18, and he outscored Hunter Bustevich, who's 14 months older.
He outscored the entire OHL defensive group and most of the forwards in the OHL.
Yeah, he was top 10 in the OHL, Canadian Hockey League Defenseman of the Year, OHL Defenseman of the Year, won a Memorial Cup. He's the kind of guy where I'll say this. So people saw him at Dev Camp, saw a guy with some swagger, capital S swagger. Yeah. He's got some confidence. He's got talent for days. He knows how good he is, and he knows where he wants to go with his talent. I think the exciting thing for me is you can send him back. Like he's got an entry-level deal. He's 18. So he's got 2 years potentially that he can spend in the Western Hockey League. He's an 06.
The OHL, yeah.
He's an 06. So he cannot be a full-time AHLer until the 2026-27 season.
He's not going to play a game in the AHL.
I don't think so.
It's very rare. I think it's like over 85% of players in the NHL play a game in the A because of how good he is early and because of the transfer agreement between the CHL and the NHL. This is a very strong candidate to never play a single AHL game. Yeah. And I think I'd like to see a look at him the next 2 falls. You might make this team.
Here's my thought process. I think you want him to go down to the OHL this year and say, okay, we want you to get 100 points this year. We want you to
by Christmas.
We want you to make everyone in the Ontario Hockey League hope and pray that you make the Flames next year. We want them to be so tired of seeing you score on them and you just shove it in their face. Because he's the kind of guy that, when he does shut you down or score on you, he's in your face a bit. He's got that chip on his shoulder. And so I think he's the kind of guy that will take that challenge and go and have a really good World Juniors, have a really good season, go try to bring his team, I think they probably want to win another Memorial Cup.
Sure.
So go and get another Memorial Cup and just destroy the competition. And then next year when, who's on this team next year? I don't know what defensemen are back next year.
It'll be the last year Rasmus Anderson's deal. So that situation may have come to a head by then.
Yeah. So the idea being like this year,
Mackenzie Weegar will be on the team.
This year, I don't know if they're I just don't know where he would fit this year. It'd be basically keeping him to keep him rather than keeping him because you have a plan for him.
What if you kept him because he was great in the preseason and you knew you were sending him back to the O anyway, but you got 10 games to kick the tires?
I just don't know where he fits in. Like who's he playing in front of? Like who's he? That's the only thing I have.
Look,
I don't doubt
he's a right shot defenseman. Could he play ahead of Pahal? I mean, he's not a third pair defenseman.
Maybe,
but Pahal can't run a power play.
Maybe you run 7D and you use him on the power. Like I don't know.
It's a fun idea.
I'm not willing to rule it out. I probably would just keep him in the O and just say like, okay, go down and just have a reign of terror. We want people to be hoping that you're getting the hell out of there. Yeah. And then, but I think, in next fall, I think the math changes because, would you want to burn like this? Flames fans, I hope you don't take this the wrong way. The team's not going to be good this year, regardless of Zane Parek's on the team or not. So
of course, yeah.
Burning a year of Zane Parek is ELC on a year where the team is just not very good probably isn't the best idea.
Oh, I agree with that entirely. I'm making the case to you've got a 10-game freebie where you don't burn a year.
Yeah.
If he's fun and maybe it doesn't hurt in the ticket sales and maybe you get a little tweak of a hammy for somebody, I think it would be amazing to see him in the league, understanding that of course he's going to go back to the O and have his reign of terror. But I don't know that what he looks like at the NHL level. It's a huge jump, but that would be a hell of a story, I guess is what I'm really saying.
Oh yeah.
But, and you know that. And
but I'd also
sure he can do it, but it would be fun.
I'd also say like, I think I'm very hesitant to advocate for just give him a taste because I'm of the mindset of once somebody goes up, you want to keep them up. And so
you have to earn the job for sure.
But I think I don't doubt he's going to make this camp
when were the
very, very difficult.
Who were the last Flames first rounders to push to stay up? I recall the Sean Monahan one. They weren't going to do it. And then Brian Burke threw his hands up and said, like, he's won a job. We didn't want him to be here, but he just, and then he forced our hand.
And then I'll say this. I think Burke did a good job that year of basically being like, okay, we'll give him 10 games. Okay, well, he's past the 10 games. We'll burn the first year, but he got to be here for 40 games in order to burn the first year of his free agency. Yeah. So I don't know it's up to him to decide if he wants to be here the full year. We can always send him back. And then it became, he's good enough to be here.
Like, and then Tkachuk was the next guy to do it. And he was undeniable from camp on.
We also forget Sam Bennett that year where Sam Bennett was really good. And then it turned out his shoulder was made of mincemeat. And then you kind of had to deal with it. But, Sam was pretty close to like he was good enough to be here outside of being not medically able to play professional hockey at that point.
It's a big part, availability. But yeah, no, that's similar but not the same. But yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah. And honestly, I if you want to say, is this kid the most exciting prospect the Flames have had since Tkachuk? I would say, yeah, I would probably put him in terms of potential impact in that mindset. And the nice thing with Tkachuk is Tkachuk's timing was probably, I'm going to say better, but the Flames, they'd started the rebuild in 2013 when they did the great great jettisoning of the veterans and Kiprusoff retired. And then the team was starting to get some traction and starting to move up. And so having Tkachuk in 16-17, okay, he was able to play a really useful role on a very important line on a team that made the playoffs. And then I think he took off from there. I think he had the right circumstances to really excel and to learn a lot. And I think Monahan too, like Monahan, I was told this by someone in Hockey Ops, Monahan gained like 8 or 10 pounds during the summer after he got drafted. Like he had the kind of, he came to camp, they put him through his paces and he had some muscle and he was physically ready. And he was always mentally ready. He was born. Yeah, he was born 25 years old.
We always joked that he was like he had the mentality like of a 30-year-old. And never mind the quotes and the deep voice. But it was like this is the most mature 18-year-old anyone's ever met.
And
I'm going to do some tax planning tonight. The boys are going out, but tax season's coming.
He knew exactly what he was doing. I have a lot of love for Sean Monahan because of. He knew what he was doing. Oh, yeah. But I think with Brustevich, I just think, for him, do you have a position like we just talked about Dustin Wolf? There's a position right now where Dustin Wolf can thrive in the NHL, even if the team's not very good, because of how he's progressed and how he's basically conquered every mountain put in front of him.
And he's been insulated too, right?
Yeah. But I think for Parek, it's just a question of, okay, I don't know if he has much left to accomplish in the OHL, but is he ideally situated to come in and be an impactful, good NHLer?
No,
and not go back.
Play away from the puck isn't there yet, and it will be. It's just a matter of time. and this is when I get to get on my soapbox and rant. There's only one league, umbrella league, in the whole world where they don't allow players to graduate based on birth certificates. It's the Canadian Hockey League.
Yeah.
If we're being honest, the best place in the world for Zane Perrick to play hockey this year, it's in the AHL.
Yeah.
He's dominated the O. But a shitty ancient rule that protects millionaire owners, not the players' best interests and developmental interests of NHL teams, is still in place. It's a joke. And I used to kind of buy that, you know, okay, if there's this one developmental league that's way better than all the others, but everyone's making up ground on the Canadian Hockey League.
Yeah.
You're seeing more and more kids come out of the National Development Program, USHL. Like, it's not what it once was. This is not a league that's over 50% Canadian anymore. And this league is the only one that has these special rules that protect millionaires, not developmental players for the goals of teams. It's silly. It's absolutely insane.
All I know is I just want to see more of Perek, and I think
I agree with that.
I think, again, preseason hockey this year. Normally, I'd say fans, if you want to skip preseason games, we're not going to blame you because, you know, it's the preseason.
Should be fun.
But geez, like especially with the drafting, between the drafting and between the potential new roles we can see from existing young players in terms of who's going to be the center. I don't know. Could it be one of these young guys? Maybe.
Yeah.
Who's going to be on defense this year? Well, we think we know who's going to be on the NHL team, but the Wranglers, who the hell knows?
Yeah.
You know, I think it's going to be really exciting. And obviously, I think Perek is the guy that if you hear he's playing, the guy in your office who has tickets to the preseason game, maybe offer to buy him a beer if he'll take you.
Yeah.
But there's also, I think as we've gone through this last couple of weeks, there's a lot of players who will be playing in the Saddledome either in preseason or throughout the regular season wearing a C or a W.
Yeah.
Who they could be fun to watch this year.
Sure will. I love when I have a really hot take. Pike's never like, yeah, or like, no. He's just like, I'm excited to see this young player play. You refuse to get political.
I'm just going to one of us worked in the league and has more informed opinions than the other one. So I'm going to, you know.
Well, I worked in the American League, but I mean,
that's the one
I didn't work in the Western League, and I know the people there feel differently. It's just, you never see it where it's like, well, you know, he's too good for the Swedish junior team, and there's a guy that owns that team. I guess we can't let him play against men in North America. No, you freaking call him up and put him in the league. When you dominate, you graduate. Every single league on earth, except the NHL, because there's no league better than it, and the other one is the CHL because of a shitty rule.
As this market's resident CBA nerd, I'll say this: the NHL and the PA has shown zero hesitation to create really, really dumb, circuitous rules for very specific reasons to sort of have their cake and eat it too. The only one they don't have is the CHL agreement. It's the only rule in a system of fairly porous, flexible rules. It's the only bit of rigidity in the system. Yeah,
it's an outlier. It doesn't fit with all their other rules.
But I also don't know what I don't know what the solution to be, because it's like, okay, did they just say, okay, if you're a first rounder, you can play in the A? Then you're kind of losing some stars.
Well, I just don't know why. What happens in every other league in the world, Ryan, if you're too good for it?
You quit.
No, you go to play baseball. No, but for example, Gradine leads the USHL in scoring. There is no rule preventing him to play in the American League this year. If you got a kid in college who dominates at college, there is no rule based on his age that prevents him from playing in the American League.
Until he signs a CHL deal.
Well, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a collegiate player. Sweden, Finland, Czech Republic, Russia. There's only one. So I'm done. That's my soapbox. Are we hot? We're good.
I think so. But
people hate that. You know, there's certain, you know who some people's blood are boiling right now. Some people's blood are absolutely boiling. They're just like, don't you know what junior hockey means to people? It's like, yeah, junior hockey means a lot to people in all other countries on earth, and there isn't a silly rule.
Yeah.
But
again, though, let's point out something.
Yeah.
The team in this market owns the NHL team, the AHL team, and the WHL team.
Imagine if you let them pick where the player could play.
Yeah, I don't know.
I think that's the Wranglers.
That's the kind of thing that fascinates me, because like the
they see both sides of that argument for sure. Yeah.
But
okay.
Yeah. That's either way. It's good seats still available.
Basha 5, Honzik 4, Brstevich 3, Wolf 2. Are we going with Perek or Perek? What are we doing here?
I'm saying Perek.
St. Peric, number 1, your top prospect. For more, FlamesNation.ca, full write-ups on the entire top 20. Last week, we counted quickly from 20 to 11 and much slower from 10 to 6. Thank you for tuning in for the top 5 today. We'll be back with another barn burner in a few days' time. Thanks for hanging, buddies.